right, good afternoon, everyone. We'll call to order the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting for September 24th, 2025. First item on our agenda is a determination of a quorum, and with 4 members of the 5-member board present, we do have a quorum. Next item is the public comments portion. Has there anyone reached out to staff wishing to speak before the meeting?
We have not had anybody reach out.
Okay. Next is a consideration of the minutes from our regular meeting on July 23rd, 2025. Those minutes were provided. Are there any changes necessary to those?
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Call the roll for us.
Mr. Batchelor?
Aye.
Mr. Tips?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Chair Young?
Aye. All right, so minutes will stand approved as written. Next is new business. One application today is special use permit. Application Z25026 by Mr. Rob Molchan on behalf of St. Caris Coptic Orthodox Church, requesting an amendment to an existing special use permit for an existing institutional group assembly use, in this case a church, in a single-family residential RS-15 zone. This is for property located at 1207 and 1227 Southeast Broad Street. They're looking at an approximately 12,220 square foot Sunday school and office building and additional parking lot expansion. If you would review that for us.
Well, good afternoon. My name's Holly Smith. For those of you who may not know me, I know Ken knows me. I'm one of your principal planners here at the city. And this particular item is a little bit more complex than most of your BZA items, and it falls in my project area, so that's why you're seeing me today. As you can see on the aerial shown on the screen above, the 2 sites are here at the corner of Middle Tennessee and Southeast Broad. The existing church site building is on the primary parcel. The city for a while has owned the parcel to the south of the property, which they're looking at their expansion area for classrooms and additional parking. And then this third parcel that they have is currently a vacant lot. As we're looking at the existing conditions on the property, as I mentioned, the existing, here we go. You can see a little bit better the backside. We have RS-15 zone district is along this area and adjacent to the south. And then these properties here off of Todd Court are all RD or duplex designated, and then these areas are OG and OGR designated surrounding the project site. As I mentioned, the existing site has an existing residence building that they're looking at removing. You'll also notice on this particular slide the existing contour lines, which make it difficult to have appropriate grading and drainage for the site. So as they were looking at a future expansion to the site, they were looking at, again, removing that building, which is currently sitting about this location, adding parking along this frontage as well as this frontage, having a little bit better way to come in and through the site, providing some trash services at this location, and then this new classroom 2-story building at the corner. Currently, some folks were asking, well, why are they looking at setting the building so far back? All of the buildings along Broad Street have a 200-foot recorded setback. It's very odd to have that. Some cities will not enforce a 200-foot setback. Normally, we only have a 42-foot setback. But unless we have some other, I'll say, higher changes done, plat maps, maybe a zone change, some of those other things, we wanted to continue to stay out of that 200-foot building setback. As we're looking at this particular item, you might have heard that there is a new, I think it was a couple months ago, the council updated some of our church and school policies. And the reason that they did that is, one, they wanted to have some standard buffer requirements, and they also wanted to for schools, if they were expanding less than 50,000 square feet, to have just a straight approval by our planning commission. So here is the section, we call it the ZZ section of our zoning code, and those are your special sections. And really what has changed is this item number 5. Instead of it talking about recreational lighting, it now talks about a type C landscape buffer shall be required to screen at a minimum. So that way we at least have an expectation from the development community. It's not a type A buffer, it's not a type B buffer, but a minimum of a type C landscape buffer. However, the BZA could require additional screening requirements if they believe it's necessary to mitigate any adverse effects. And then the other ones that were added is numbers 11, 12, and 13. 11 is talking about this building height, and it basically says that accessory buildings should be limited to what's in the chart 2, which this particular zone district would be 35. However, the BZA may approve building height that exceeds above this standard as long as they find that they still meet the standards of general applicability. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn over to the plan pages so I can go through a little bit more specifically some of those provisions. So this particular site plan layout, you'll notice a couple of colored lines in place. The biggest one being everything kind of in this area is staying as is. They're not making any changes to the existing developed site. But this area where they're talking about the parking, this green line represents the 40-foot setback, and under our BZA rules, it says parking shall be 40 feet back from the property line. And this is actually measured from, you'll notice a little red line and blue line in the front. The red line represents the existing 80 feet of right-of-way that's within Broad Street. Under our major transportation plan, it requires a 5-lane cross-section, and that cross-section's to be 84 feet. The half width of that is basically 42, so they're going to be required to dedicate 2 feet of right-of-way to meet that major thoroughfare plan, and that 40-foot setback is measured from that new line. So it's basically 42 feet back from where the current property line is today. The other thing that you'll notice in the packet was this kind of brightly yellow colored area. Currently there's a private sewer that runs through the site. City standards are if it's longer than 150 feet, we want it to be a city standard size pipe. So as we've been working with our water resources department, it would actually come through this yellow area and be able to stub to the south. So should anybody to the south need regular city sewer services, they have the ability to tie that in, but it will stop at the property line. As far as landscaping, I mentioned that number 5 that had changed under the ZZ standards. And here you're seeing kind of the, let me zoom in a little bit better, that 12-foot minimum type C landscape buffer, and it goes along the entire southerly edge of the property site along here. And then it comes up along this site so that it is adjacent to the new development area. Usually, what you'll see here in the front, you'll see the landscape area along the frontage here, and that's to basically screen the parking lot area. But those are the landscapes that are proposed in this development. And then you may recall when we were talking about height, the page in the report that best shows it. There we go. So this is that corner of the site. Currently it is showing at, I believe it's a 15-foot setback off the property line between here and here. And the staircase portion of the building here, you're required to have rooftop access. Basically, I'll call it the stairwell, exceeds above that height of the building. And the city also, in order to get a little bit more building articulation, usually requires the height of the building vary so that you have a little bit better building standards. So here, That stairwell is basically at 44 feet in height, which is 35 feet above, or excuse me, 35 feet's the standard, which is a difference of 9 feet, is what they're asking for as part of their approval. And this is that elevation that would face that south side. So here on the left, this taller portion is the stairwell portion of the building. This portion here is just at 35.4, and then this one gives that, again, building articulation difference on that southerly building. And the building, all four sides are brick with the soldier brick on the windows, and then the base being that stone along the bottom. So here, as staff looked at it, of course, we're looking at two different things. We're looking at the general standards and of applicability for the site. As parking is related for church sites, all of their parking is based on the amount of seating within the main sanctuary. The main sanctuary has, I believe it's, double check, 520 seats. The standard is 1 parking space per 8 seats, which equates to 65 spaces. They currently have 69 on site, and they're wanting to add another 20, of which 16 will be regular spaces, bringing them up to 85, and then 4 parking spaces for ADA handicapped purposes. So that's how they're addressing that particular portion. And then staff does not believe the removal of the existing house to the south is of any historical significance. It's not in any of our historic zone districts, nor is it historically designated. However, the BZA, if identifies any particular features that you believe need to be preserved, let us know on that portion. And then just going through the various components, the parking areas, they are looking at adding 8 pole lights within those areas that are shown on the photometric plan. Those are standard 20-foot poles, and generally we have a standard no more than 0.5 foot candles at the property line, but they're actually at 0 or far below, several feet into the site for that particular one. And I think, see other items to cover, make sure I'm not missing any of the highlights. And I'm hitting those items that maybe are new to y'all, or they may be slightly different in it. And again, when we talked about those additional standards, they do talk about that building height. And according to here, it's in the BZA's purview, and this is interesting. They don't call it a variance. They say it's just part of the use permit application, which they're asking to be considered. Fire marshal standards, they're required to do that with our building codes department. And then for prior conditions, this particular project goes back, I think, about 20 plus years. And so it didn't have many requirements back during the initial setting, but here we are looking at basically anything that they're creating new would meet city standards from a parking, landscape, design guideline standpoint. And then Rob Mulchin is here with SEC. Thank you. I don't work with Rob very often either. And I think that's, and then we did require a traffic study be done for this. And if you haven't seen it yet, we now have a new layer on the city's website, which is traffic studies. So you can actually zoom into this particular area, click on that layer, and get access to the whole 180 or so pages of traffic. So they did do an additional traffic study, and currently some of the motions with existing traffic for left turn at the intersection going kind of as you're coming down Middle Tennessee westbound and taking that left turn move during the peak hour traffic, it is outside of our level of service today. So with or without any changes to the church site, but long-term, Broad Street is shown as a future 5-lane roadway. So the thing that we're making sure of is that we have adequate right-of-way for that, but because it is a TDOT territory, it's fully in their purview when they make any additional improvements to their facility because it is in their right-of-way jurisdiction. And I think that's all that I have. Now, Rob, did you have anything to add to it, or just here for questions and answers? And I believe I've talked to a couple of people in the audience that would like to speak on this item as well, and I believe it is a notice public hearing.
Ms. Smith, can you let the BZA know what staff's recommendation is,
See,
as
I
well
knew
as
I
the
missed
conditions?
something. I missed the most important part. Like I said, I don't do these very often. So, in looking at the packet, page 9, staff's recommendations would be approval based on meeting the development standards of the ordinance with the following recommendations. One, that a final plat consolidating those 3 parcels be submitted, approved, and recorded. And as part of that, they would have that 2 additional feet of right-of-way along Southeast Broad so that it can accommodate that 5-lane 2040 major transportation plan standard, and they do so prior to their certificate of occupancy. 2, that a site plan shall be submitted to the planning department. Most of these pages you've seen are their site plan, but usually they may have a little bit further refined information to make the approval and look at it from all the other departments. But that approval be done prior to any building permit issuance. And the site plan submittal shall include civil plans, landscape plans, photometrics, building and elevations, and any other necessary items to demonstrate compliance with the zoning ordinance and our design guidelines. And then the driveway access to Southeast Broad Street is subject to review and approval by TDOT. So currently there are 2 access areas on this street, but this is at a slightly different location, as is this one, to get us further away from the intersection. So TDOT will review that to meet their standards, and we don't want to step into their jurisdictional areas. So that would be staff's recommendation on this particular report. And then any other items that the BZA has for this particular project.
Thank you. A quick question. So this big piece here, you got the parking there by Broad Street, and this is for lot 1227. That's just green space there in the building that's,
This one here?
right.
Currently, yes, it's just scheduled for green space at this time. I know they're looking at a lot of expansion to parking at some point in the future as well, but we don't have any of those applications. We've asked if, at a future time, if they do want further expansions, they would either have to come back to this board or a zone change, one or the other.
Yeah, I see the 200-foot setback line, so I guess anything closer to Broad Street from that 200 would be off limits for them, or could the parking potentially
Correct.
go
Your
there?
200-foot line is roughly about here.
Right.
And so you can kind of see the current church is just behind that line.
Okay.
So with it as it stands today, there is a 200-foot setback.
Okay.
But parking could be within that 200 feet, right?
Correct.
Or outside the 200, well, however you
Yes.
want to look at it.
Yes, but buildings cannot.
Right.
Okay.
And I think if I looked at it before, the better place to have any drainage is actually towards, other sections of the lot, whereas the front portions tend to be the highest portions of the project site.
Because I was going to ask a
And then
similar,
Rob, I think, just had something to add.
similar question, because these parking spaces towards Broad, they're going to have to walk a pretty good distance that these are not even going to be utilized in all likelihood.
Good afternoon, Rob Moulton, SEC, on behalf of the church. The additional parking spaces is because currently the church is having a little bit of some capacity issues from a car standpoint. So as part of the request to look at adding the Sunday school building to the property, again, the church is meeting its capacity in regards to its occupancy on that church on that side, but they don't have any room for Sunday school space. So they're kind of overcrowding themselves with different operations having to be taken care of at different times of day. So like in a typical Sunday school setting, you would typically have Sunday school occurring during a service on that side of things, whereas they can't currently function that way. So that's really the request behind the expansion building for the Sunday school, so they can have cohabitated activities happening at the same time on the property on that side. So
Yeah.
right now, the facility just isn't big enough to allow them to do both functions, so that's why they're looking at these expansion plans to allow for the Sunday school to be built in there. The additional parking is just part of the overall improvements from a circulation standpoint, but also to provide additional parking because currently they have some parking restraints on the property in regards to the spaces that are in there versus the congregation that's showing up. So they wanted to add a few extra spaces in there. It is somewhat walk of a distance, but if you think about World Outreach or you think about the other larger churches we have here in town, for my church, I do walk a good distance from my parking spot to the church on that side. So I don't think that's as far as I may walk in regards to my church. But yes, it does seem a little bit further away from the standpoint of the Sunday school or the church, but it's really not that far of a distance on those types of things.
So I mean, it's really none of my business, but why not park in that first, closer to the Sunday school building? That's where I'm going with this. You got all this land that you can put parking spaces on, but you're not utilizing it.
They're looking at it from the standpoint of those, with the additional space that's to the east, when you look at it from that standpoint
Yeah.
down there on that side. That space there potentially could be an opportunity for another building at some point in time in the future.
Okay.
So this pad grading that you see that's there, that broad space that's right here on that side, that's been pad graded out. So you see a retaining wall that runs right
Okay,
here.
that makes more sense to me.
So this is a
Okay.
retaining wall that's actually because the property itself has a ridge that runs through here. The retaining wall, we're actually cutting this down. So actually, any structures that are behind that retaining wall are actually already sitting lower than the adjacent property to the southeast of us on that side.
Okay.
So that's what that situation is. So those are opportunities for additional buildings in the future or additional parking coming
Okay.
forward in the future at some point in time.
I
But for now,
understand.
the request is simply just to add the Sunday school building so they can have cohabitated functions happening during service hours.
Thanks for that clarification. Any further?
I've got some other questions. When you're talking about the Class C buffer being 12 foot wide, with that higher, that new building that's proposed, how high would the vegetation be set on that?
So in regards
to
to the
be-
retaining wall,
provide good screening.
this building right here right now, the engineer has got it set at 644. So we're talking about a retaining wall that starts off at 644 down here at this end and gets higher. You get about 650, 652, where the middle of the ridge line sits on that side. So this building here would be sitting from 0 to probably like 5 or 6 feet below grade behind that
Okay.
retaining wall. So the actual type C buffer would be beyond that. So you're talking at initial plantings, the evergreen trees that would go in there would go in at 6 foot. So you're talking anywhere from 6 foot to potentially 11 foot of coverage vertically going up along the backside of that new Sunday school building on that side. So in regards to that 44-foot elevation that we're asking for the stairwell, you're already taking about 5 or 6 feet out of it to bring it down to below 40 foot in elevation in relationship to existing grades in the property to the south of us on that side.
Okay.
And so then you throw in the extra 6 foot of vertical relief that will eventually grow, because those
Yeah.
evergreen trees will grow, will add even more vertical height and green space behind that building.
I wasn't thinking about the elevation change from that, where that ridge is, yeah.
Yeah.
And so without the allowance for the staircase, now with the new regulation, that's 35-foot height would be by right and not something that I guess we could additional screen it, but they would have the right to the 2-story building there?
So the way it's currently works is, I mean, that height's measured from grade, so if they're grading down, we're still gonna measure 35 feet from the grade they produce. So they still would need, I don't think variance is the right term, but it's just additional height with their building, as approved in the special use permit.
Okay.
All right, just clarification again, going from the other comments. So under section 2 of the general standards, it talks about that height being out of compliance, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then in the additional standards, section 9 said you could have a variance, or BZA could grant a variance, and 11 is incorporate. And so all things, we don't need to make this a consideration of a variance for the height difference. We only incorporate if we approve this, it's already considered?
Yes. So if you approve the special use permit as it's been presented, you would be approving it with the 44-foot height, extra allowance. What that was is part of kind of reviewing this section, and Mr. Halliburton is aware of the other things that went along with schools that were packaged in this amendment, is the group of this institutional group assembly use that includes church. Oftentimes, churches have those non-habitated portions of the building that are up higher. This allows this body to review, make sure there's no impact on adjacent neighbors. If you feel that there needs to be additional fencing or landscaping, that's still within your purview to add that to it. But it allows this body to review, make that judgment call of, is this going to have an effect on a neighboring property owner's quality of life? And, so this is where y'all have quite a bit of latitude to make that determination. In this case, with the grade change, the type C buffer there, staff is comfortable that they're doing things to mitigate the effects on the neighbors. But ultimately, this body can add additional things if you wish.
And those guidelines are meant to incorporate things like bell tower or steeples, things like that.
Steeples, in this case, what you're seeing is a roof access in a staircase. It's not intended to, and Mr. Blumley can correct me if I'm wrong here, it's not intended to add additional stories of usable space for classrooms, office, things of that nature. It's for,
Decoration.
apparatuses, steeples, bell towers, whatever that may be.
Staircases in this case.
Yes.
Okay. I guess just an additional, I'm sorry, Mr. Blomley.
Yeah, I was just going to second what Mr. Donovan said. Good afternoon, BZA members. When we amended the zoning ordinance, rather than make, knowing that there are many churches that are on large parcels especially, rather than make churches that want taller buildings have to apply for a variance, which the standard is much different for a variance, it was our opinion, and then Planning Commission and City Council agreed that granting the flexibility through the special use permit process and comparing the impact of the taller building versus the standards of general applicability for the special use permit, that it was more appropriate to include that as a function of the special use permit as opposed to a separate height variance request. And if you'll recall, we did the same thing a few years ago for cell towers. Rather than making the height of cell towers a function of a variance, we made the height of cell towers a function of the special use permit, so that you all could look at the height of the structure in relation to the standards of general applicability for special use permits.
Thanks for the clarification. Any further questions for the applicant here?
I guess for staff as well, so is the idea of combining the three parcels into one so that everything falls under this permit? Is that the idea?
Well, usually when we have multiple sites, for two reasons, building and codes, when it's not all on the same site, it makes it much more difficult, and because parking is on one lot and the other parking is on a different lot, and if they have parking on the third lot, you want them all on the same property, and then that way it's much easier to follow. Previously, there was only a reason to have that main lot because that was the only one that was developed, but traditionally we will require that they actually consolidate all the lots as part of their overall process and permit.
Also, the current access to the church on Southeast Broad, it's not being closed. So there'll be actually two entryways right there, correct?
Correct. So currently there already is two entryways on Broad Street. Hopefully you can see it on this site plan a little bit better. So you can see that there's one access point here, and one access point here.
Yeah, that was to
As
the,
our public infrastructure
the house.
folks were working with them, they really wanted to keep them as far of a distance back from the intersection because there's this left-hand turn pocket. So what they're doing now is their site access is coming in at this point, and then that secondary one, again, further away, so that TDOT really wants to try to keep anything close to the intersection with limited turn movement. So that one that they're having here, I believe, is only a right in, right out. So the idea is you can't come down this street and turn in here. They would only be able to turn in further to the south on the site. And that basically helps us in our function of that particular intersection.
Any further questions for staff or the applicant before the public hearing? All right, we'll move on now to the public hearing. If anyone is present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you'd come up to the podium and give us your name and address and provide us any comments you may have.
Hi, my name is Kason Pongsuvan, and I live next door to the proposed property, the house that's to be knocked down. I do understand that they are going to have the 12 feet high landscape buffer on that side that is next to my property. My concern is that's still not enough for noise control, which I don't think anything will be enough for noise control when their church get together, which they do get together just about every day. And with the, in front of the house right now, they use it right now for parking for church, and all the parking fill up every time they meet. I know with the new proposed parking that they'll have, I don't know how that's gonna take care of the overflow car that they have already. But with that being said, I would like to ask to see if they can put up some kind of fencing along with the 12 feet landscape on that side. So that way, sometime when the children are playing soccer, whatever, on that open space, they do sometimes kick the ball over and run over to the property. We just want to make sure that they're being safe, not run over and fall and stuff on our property, and not hearing all the noises so much, or all of that, just for our quality of comfort when we're outside, which we are, outside in our backyard all the time. So I'm not opposed to what they're doing. I just would like to have a fence, some type of privacy fence along that side, from the back of their building all the way to the front. That's all I ask for, because, like I said, they do get together, which is fine. Everybody have the right to do that, and especially in the summertime, they stay late, sometimes till 10 or so o'clock, kids playing outside doing their thing. And it's kind of hard for us to try to relax and stuff too. Also, I have concern about lighting on the new proposed parking lot. I know you said they're gonna add some more lighting poles and stuff to it. I don't know how tall the pole of the lighting will be, because, and I don't know whether they'll shut those lights off at night at a certain time or not. It will shine to our house, trying to sleep, even though we have curtain. That might be hard for us to be able to go to sleep with the light shining onto our windows. So, that's all I got. Thank you.
Oh, gosh.
My name is Andrea Stafford, and I live in Todd Court, 1016 Todd Court. I've lived in this neighborhood close to 14 years now, in a couple of different of those duplexes that were mentioned. Sorry, I'm very nervous. I don't like to speak in public. I'm not against the church expanding, but like they said, they're at capacity, they're over capacity. Someone has mentioned parking. I think maybe you should get a better detail on the parking. That empty lot that sits on Middle Tennessee is a parking lot. It is almost completely full. almost every day that they have service and every day that they don't have service. As the other homeowner mentioned, I'm going to say 6.5 days a week they're there, if not 7.5 days a week they're there. 7 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. Summertime is great. I love to be outside. We own a lawn care business. We have to go to bed early. Unfortunately, through our windows and our TV and our air conditioner and our fan, we hear kids screaming, yelling. We don't know if someone's hurt. We don't know if they're having a good time. It's always on edge. The lighting issue, yeah, that's not going to fly because, like I said, we have to go to bed. Lights are going to stay on all night because you want to take care of your property, your church property that you've just built so much money in. If you already said you're overburdened, you got not enough space, and you're trying to expand into other spaces, maybe we should look at maybe finding you a different place. I'd be more than happy to help. Let's talk about some other things. Just the notes that I made this week. 9/19/25 at 7:21 p.m., many kids screaming and yelling. 9/19/25 at 9:17 p.m., still more yelling and screaming. 9/20/25 at 8:11 p.m., many more kids screaming. 9/21 at 11:46 a.m., kids returning from the convenience store on Bradyville Highway. Sorry, let me pause there. Fencing was talked about along the back end there towards Todd Court and Toddington. They come around the church, they cut through a person's driveway. Every one of the children go through the same driveway, through Todd Court, down Toddington, cross over Bradyville to go to a store. When safety reasons would be stay on the sidewalk, cross at the sidewalk, and then go to the street that is on Middle Tennessee, but no one does. They all come down here to Bradyville. It may be 1 kid, 2 kids, 15, 20 kids at a time. We've had to ask them many times, please pick up your trash, because when they come back from the store, they got their junk food, and I guess they're eating it along the way. They're dropping all of their drink bottles, their bags, their wrappers, and then we are going out to keep our yard looking nice and our home looking nice by picking it all up. The yard, the empty lot that I mentioned that is used for parking, is also used for soccer games, mostly soccer. Again, always laden with trash. So the trash is blowing into Todd Court, and we are always picking up that trash. I'm mowing grass back there in that area. I have to pick up trash before I can mow for one of the neighbors that we mow for. The noise is just undescribable. We are a couple houses down into the cul-de-sac, and it's just so loud. Again, with doors closed, air conditioner on, fan blowing, television and or radio on, and you can still hear them. The traffic, the understanding of this building being put so far back, so close to the houses that we are trying to live in and have a good quality of life in, that's really going to take away from our quality of life. If those huge building with all of these children and grown-ups in and out, there was a mention of the only thing that would be along that wall is an emergency exit. Well, the emergency exit that they use now is a constant door. What is supposed to be their emergency exit on the church is used constantly. It's used more than the front door. People are always in and out, so you have to expect the same out of the new building. I really don't approve any of this with saying that the 12 foot of plants. That's not going to stop any of the sound. It's not going to stop any of the trash. It's not going to stop any of the movement that's invading into our own homes. So I'd like to see some more action. I'd also like to understand more about that proposed road that was to go between the new building and the old church, because that is probably not going to be very good to my liking either. I'm starting to run on, and I see it in your eyes, gentlemen, so I apologize. There is just one more entry here that on the 21st also, another group of kids coming back from the store, and they were all dropping trash at the same time. So again, that's just one couple of days of access in our neighborhood. And I guess step back now. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your time. Anyone else present wishing to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and open the floor for any further discussion or motion.
Well, Mr. Tripp, first of all, their comments, I think, bring up some good points, particularly with regard to more privacy into these, residential neighborhoods that to, in effect, mitigate noise and other situations coming across into other people's properties. And so I think we need to consider that strongly.
Is there, if we require a fence without seeing this, the whole 3 lots, is there a way to keep these people from going to Todd Court? I would have to agree. I wouldn't want them coming through my property either. And I don't know if there's if there's a way to put a fence such that they have to go to Middle Tennessee Boulevard, no matter what.
So
Along
maybe
the
just,
southeast.
Yeah.
maybe
yeah,
just
yeah.
for clarification where they're coming through. I'm hoping you can see it here, because here's kind of Todd Court is on this, if you just draw a line.
They are walking from right here, from the emergency exit, straight down this driveway, straight down the cul-de-sac, down the road, I'm not sure if I'm still drawing, and then across the street to
Okay.
Brady Grove. And again, that's probably not completely where Toddington comes out, but that is their exact path.
Okay.
And they may not be coming out of the emergency exit, it could be through the doors, but the doors are way over here. I mean, it's just all the traffic funnels through this way.
Well,
So I
stand
feel
reason-
like if they could fence off this here, and again, I'm sorry,
No.
and then you've got this neighbor, this young lady that is sitting next to me, so this would be
Right.
her house here. So she's proposing a fence, and we're talking about a fence, we're
And
not talking
she's-
about a 8-foot
So
fence.
here you're
We're talking
probably
about a
talking
35-foot fence, a 35-foot building.
Yeah,
We're gonna
that would
need
be
something,
preferred to all the way down there, because
something close
you
to that height.
propose a driveway for them to go in here, because right now, sometimes they come through my driveway over
Sound
there
barrier
already.
walls they put on the interstate kind of situation, that's how loud they get.
Hopefully that at least clarifies where it sounds like it's happening. So it sounds like they're going from the church site to Todd. I believe the church actually owns this site.
Yes, they do.
So it's not private property of the other neighbors, it's actually theirs, but I can fully see how strange why they would go that way.
Why would they need to add that property?
Okay, well,
No,
okay, well, one
we've
more
already
time, and then
closed the
we'll
public hearing, ma'am. I'm
close the public
sorry.
hearing. Okay. The, their options for sound is the noise ordinance, I assume, correct? If you're got a building that's next door, it's gonna be times when there's noise, it's gonna maybe go from if it gets too loud, the police department, or the whatever staff that has the,
Yeah, it would be under the noise ordinance, which Murfreesboro Police Department is who enforces that. There are, and Mr. Tully, you can correct me, there are a few officers, is my understanding, that are trained to actually operate decibel meters if the situation calls for it.
Right. Yes. And then the other possibility that I know that has occasionally been required, I think, by the Planning Commission to mitigate noise is solid vinyl fencing. So if this body were to consider requiring a fence, if it were to be a solid vinyl fence, that does have some sound mitigative qualities from what I understand.
Well, I think one thing, just in commenting on this overall application, I think it's safe to say that it's atypical of other churches that typically only are meeting on Sundays, Sunday evenings, and Wednesdays. And from all of the remarks that have been made, that it apparently the group is meeting there frequently all throughout the days and the week, which is highly, irregular from my experience with churches. So I think it brings another level of consideration to providing adequate, I don't want to use the word protection, but to provide privacy to the adjoining neighbors that are impacted by this additional, and the additional frequency and additional traffic, and noise and ingress and egress on other properties. So I think we need to take that in consideration as well.
Well, I guess with that, I mean, I would make a motion to approve pending staff comments and the installation of a vinyl privacy fence along the rear and south property lines.
Second.
And if I may, can we get a clarification on any expectations for the height of that fence? So,
Ma'am, public hearing's over.
Well, I didn't understand what you said.
so just give us some clarification and guidance on the height. What I don't want to get into is a situation where the applicant proposes a fence that this board may feel is insufficient, but is a vinyl fence.
Can I ask clarification too, as location? Are we speaking in regards to this perimeter right here? Because this is an office for a business on that property there, on
But
that
if they-
side.
Rob, if all they
Again,
gotta do is
church owns
walk
this
back
property
there and then
too,
walk through the
so-
yard again, so you haven't accomplished the foot traffic.
And I get that on that side, and the church is watching this today, so they are taking notes in regards to what is happening with their
Yeah.
congregation, utilizing that pathway through their church property that they have on the cul-de-sac on that side, so I'm hoping they're taking notes as regards to working with their neighbors better in regards to litter, trash, and all kinds of things that may be happening based on their congregation on that side. And with this, this right here, this segment through here, again, like I said, has a retaining wall, so mainly in the middle of this portion here, you're gonna be 5 to 6 feet lower than, so the building's gonna be 5 or 6 feet lower. So you already got like a 5 or 6 foot tall wall there. So I think in regards to what, we would look at a standard 6 foot tall fence to be incorporated along this periphery, along that side there, if that's amicable with this body.
In my opinion, I don't think it solves the issue for the adjoining neighbor. That's why I think if
This
you're
one right
going to do
here?
the privacy, yes, sir. You're going to.
That's what I'm saying,
Provide
there's a 6 foot tall
barrier.
privacy fence on
I'm
top
sorry?
of, 6 foot tall privacy fence on top of that wall, or that, along that property line. So portion of that fence will actually be, technically 11 foot high along the backside, But again, you're gonna have the actual structure itself sitting here, which is already gonna act as a privacy element anyways at, 35 to 40, 44 feet in that corner. So you've already got a privacy fence set up by the fact you have a building wall there. Then you have a 5 or 6 foot tall wall here that you would then put another 6 foot tall fence on top of that, plus potentially an adjacent building at some point in time that could be built on that is going to be another privacy element. But that's for the future. That's
Yeah, I don't
we're here to
think
talk
you
about
consider
today.
that.
So I mean, from the standpoint of looking at a fence, I don't think I've got an issue. That's the recommendation of this body to put a fence, as long as we can get clarification as to location and what's that height.
So I'm just gonna, I know we have a motion in a second, but I'd like to see the fence on, from the full, all the way around. I
I
mean,
think that's, we're all aligned with that.
I would too.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think that was the motion, so we're
Yeah.
in agreement.
is this the location that you're looking
no,
No.
no, all the way to
The
Middle Tennessee.
OG
South and
property
east.
As well.
So here, and then continue.
All the way.
All the way.
Yep, there you go.
There you go.
Is that the same, did the C buffer travel between the OG and this property, or is it
does
different?
not.
Was there a different
The
level of
C
buffer?
stops about here.
Can you bring up the landscape?
Okay,
The C buffer, as I recall, is required where the property abuts residential.
residential, right.
And it's where the development is occurring, so where they're actually building parking lot in the building.
You got the fence, then so along the south portion, the fence, then the type C buffer, or the fence outside the buffer?
I would say that if the BZA has a preference, it should probably be included in your motion. We've seen it proposed, we've seen it proposed either way.
See outside.
Here we go.
I don't know.
So here's where the type C buffer is. So it comes down that same, so where you're talking about, and my understanding, Mr. Mulchin was saying the retaining wall is here, so I think his question would be is, is it sitting on top of that retaining wall and then coming down here and then basically in that section. So that basically the fence is on the inside of the church property, sitting on top of that retaining wall. And main thing for us is we have, I don't know what our standards are for planting of the trees, but obviously we want to make sure that the trees have adequate space for survivability, and how far down that they need to go.
Yeah, and I think we're thinking a 6 foot without a gate, so that there's not the encouragement to connect to the courtyard or the court behind.
Well, that's
So
their
basically,
property back
people
there.
wouldn't be coming through that
Well,
section
like it's
because
their
there'll be a
property.
wall.
I don't know.
What are you saying?
Well, if you mentioned not having access to it, that it's their property back there. Is it reasonable to expect no access between the church and that piece of property they own? Certainly, we want to mitigate the traffic through Todd Court that's become a nuisance to the neighbors, but is it reasonable not to allow that, was just my question.
If there's a gate, then I think you're
You're back in the same,
where- yeah.
same problem?
My only other question is, I don't want to elongate this hearing, but, so I don't understand why the C buffer doesn't go all the way to the east mark line, because you're adjacent to residential, that whole area.
And we're combining the properties, so, I mean, I thought that
don't
was
think
my
that one's
earlier
gonna-
question. I thought that brought everything under, now it treats it as a single property, and if the entirety of the property as one as opposed to three, if any part of that abuts a residential, then the C buffer should be extended to match the fence line.
Yeah, and this is, like I said, the first time we've used the new provision. So if you look at item 5 here, this is the new standard. So it just says a type C buffer shall be required to screen the proposed use from any property zoned or used for single-family purposes, regardless of if it's institutional group assembly use of property. In the event of new building expansions, accessory buildings, or other miscellaneous site improvements, the type B buffer, buffer, shall only be required in the area of such expansions or improvements. That's a little bit open-ended topic. What do you consider to meet that requirement?
Well,
But-
and it does continue for the BZA. However, the BZA may require additional screening requirements if necessary to mitigate adverse impacts on adjacent residential properties.
That other section is actually office, I think is the reason why.
Yeah, the property that would be to the northeast is zoned OGR. It's an office. The remaining portion that would be bordering residential is the, 1008 and 1006 property that the church owns.
And it was, and it was specific in the ordinance amendment that the buffer requirement would be adjacent to single-family residential zoning or uses. And the property that the church owns on Todd Court is a duplex. I think it's zoned for duplexes. And the property along Middle Tennessee Boulevard, as was mentioned, is zoned office. And so therefore, by ordinance, the landscape buffer would not be required along those property lines. However, the board has the ability to require screening above and beyond what the ordinance would require if it feels that that is necessary to meet the standards of general applicability.
Yeah, and I don't think we're trying to place an undue burden on the church, and with additional expenses, but we're trying to balance that against the concerns of the neighbors. So if not for the concerns of the neighbors, I don't think we would be requesting the extension of the Class C buffer or the construction of the privacy fence.
So as far as the buffer, are y'all talking about it along this property line as well? Okay,
No.
just
No,
this
it-
one right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the fence would be constructed along that, along the entirety that we already laid out.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly be within y'all's purview to add those requirements.
I would just recommend, though, that if you are going to, if it's the desire of the board to extend the buffer beyond what's required by the ordinance, you should specify the specific adverse impact that was mentioned at the meeting that you are responding to. So, for example, the concern about people, traversing across the property line, the fence is addressing that specific adverse impact. If you want to extend the buffer as well, I would recommend that you specify what the adverse impact is that you are responding to with that extension of the buffer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the adverse impact is as described in the public hearing, that there's been both noise and traffic that's extending beyond the site that's in front of us, that's impacting the neighbors. So this is specifically to address those concerns. Is that sufficient?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I guess why is this stopping the C where it is and didn't go on to this?
So the answer to that is because under the ordinance, the type C buffer is only required in the immediate area of building expansions. And so because the only building that's being built is in this corner, it's just around that building that needs to be have the type C buffer. But of course, as we've been discussing,
Gotcha. Okay.
you can add beyond that if necessary to
That's
address
why
an
I
adverse
stopped initially.
impact.
That makes
Yes,
sense.
sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right, and the difference is along this buffer is RS 15 to the south. And then this is where you get duplexes, but here, this is directly adjacent to the building, so here is why it had here. But the reason it's not here was this is RD, which is duplex. And then this one over here is your OGR. And that's the main reason that those were not included in their approval. But as Mr. Tully has mentioned, that's in the BCA's purview to be able to mitigate items that have been brought before the public hearing.
This is just my opinion. The landscaping buffer in those areas that she's marked, to me, would be important, and outside that, a privacy fence of adequate height, whether it's 6 foot high or 8 foot high. Also, likewise, if you were to extend the privacy fence to accommodate the commercial, the office, not necessarily requiring a landscape buffer in that area.
Correct.
That was my opinion.
Yeah, I think we agree.
I think that's where we are.
Yep.
I think that's where we are.
Okay.
So what we thought we heard is, as we're looking at this page, this is where your landscape buffer is extending.
Correct.
And then this would roughly be the location of the fence.
Exactly.
Correct.
Can we say 6 feet or do we need 8? I'm comfortable with 6.
I don't have.
I
strong
think 6
opinion on
with
that either.
you got the retaining wall that's giving you some extra cushion on their biggest part of it.
So I think we're clear on our intentions. Are you clear on the direction?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second, which both still stand.
We got some
Well,
coaches huddling over there.
So a couple of things I just want to make sure we get clarified. The fence needs to be in addition to the type C buffer, because part of the type C buffer standards can be met with a fence. So if you want it in addition to, that needs to be specified. And also during your discussion, you mentioned potentially not permitting a gate in this fence. Are we going to do that as well?
So we need to access the church's property that's to the south of there, whether or not they don't have any access.
To me, I mean, I guess it depends on the use. Is there somebody that's, sometimes the employees of the church live close by and have a residence there? If they want to go from one to the other, I can now, like we were trying to limit the.
that could be mitigated if a gate was allowed where the access is coming from the OG, and they would still be able to have direct access to their property, would they not?
If the gate was along the property line with the OG,
Where OG is?
I don't believe the church owns that OG property, so they'd have
I
to
know
be.
they don't own the OG
Okay.
property, but
Just on the,
I think they
On their
own
side of
the duplex,
so as opposed
I see.
to,
In this solid red line, you're saying if there was a gate somewhere in that?
closer to the OG zone.
yeah,
or
I think that's
or
fair.
at least on the OG zone.
So as opposed to directly behind the new structure?
Right.
Yeah,
You mean closer to this section?
there you go.
Yes,
Yep.
ma'am. Absolutely, yes.
So if they wanted to have one, they could lock it.
Yes.
That should hopefully
And that should give
give them
the
access,
residential
should they
neighbors
have a.
adequate
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
security on that. So I guess going back to the motion, and I don't want to steal away from you, but from my interpretation, we are recommending items 1, 2, and 3 in the staff recommendation as they are, and adding a fourth item for privacy fencing surrounding the entire south and east portions of the property with a 5-foot or 6-foot solid vinyl privacy fence. Is that correct? That's the way you interpret your intention, I guess?
Again, I'm not for a gate. The whole intent is to alleviate any foot traffic onto Todd Court. So I am not in, I'll vote nay if we have a gate. So, but that, I'm just giving you my opinion.
I have no objection to take that gate out.
yeah, my preference would be
As
for
far as
without a
making
gate. I
it
mean, I
safer.
understand that it's their property, so that may, but we're trying to
Yeah,
balance.
trying to limit that, and I get it, you know, like the applicant be here, guest here, and say they'll monitor it, but if you don't put it, you're just gonna push the traffic onto OG, and they're gonna walk,
They're going to have to
if they're
walk
gonna get
out
the
on
house.
Middle Tennessee Boulevard.
On the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's the sidewalk and jump right back in,
Yeah.
and that still may happen,
Okay.
that still may happen anyway.
But the convenience store that they're going to is on Middle Tennessee Boulevard, correct?
On Bradyville, which is the next signal
Oh, I
down.
see.
Still all the way down
That's really all the purview we have.
to Dr. Bishop's.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I can see both I can see both ways on the gate. If they own it already and need access to it,
Yeah,
I don't want to be too,
that's what I say. I mean, I was thinking that would be more acceptable. Just by mere fact of having a gate instead of open-ended,
Right.
freedom to walk, it certainly should curtail that substantially, trips going across other people's property, going straight onto their property. And if it weren't for that fact that they own that property, I would say no gate's necessary.
we'll see if legal will give us some direction, and we'll vote on it one way or another. Do you think we need to take under advisement?
I'm thinking through the requirement not to have a gate on that fence and thereby restrict their access to their own property.
They don't use it for church reasons.
Ma'am?
It's, yeah, honestly, I can see it both ways. I can see arguments both ways
Okay.
on that.
Yeah, I mean,
The motion, what did the motion include?
The motion includes no gate, and the reasoning is that the property, although owned by them, is not before us today, is irrelevant to the use. It's not a church. It's a for lease property or for rent. If it was part of this, if they were going to roll it in instead of combining 3 lots, combine all 4, if we were considering it, in my mind, the fact that they own it as a different use, it could be a convenience store, it could be a liquor store, it's a rental, it's irrelevant to the usage. If they want to come before us, combine all 4, we consider that, then we can. But I don't see, I understand the common ownership, but as it stands, it's a different use.
Okay.
What if it were a parsonage, though?
If it was, it would be before us. Yeah.
So it wouldn't be incorporated, but still might not be incorporated. But
Yeah, parsonage in this case as a separate property would still be considered separate.
Okay.
If it's on the property, it would be combined. So, I'm going with no fence. If there's a
Okay.
legal reason,
Okay.
then legal can deal with it.
And we will.
No gate.
Yeah.
No gate.
Did we need direction on the fence outside the buffer, inside? I thought along the retaining wall made some sense, but does staff need our guidance on that or want our guidance
I mean,
on
if
that?
you're okay with either location, we'll let the applicant make that proposal. If you feel strongly one way or the other, I would recommend.
Just wanted to make sure we were clear. I don't have a strong feeling. Just want to make sure we were
What
clarifying it for
about the
staff.
maintenance of said landscaping, if it's
Right.
across the fence? How do they get there? They obviously going to go across somebody else's property. So I think in this situation, you got to have the fence outside and the buffer inside. And I think both of those together bring much more, especially as the vegetation grows higher and higher, it gives proper, buffering to have both.
That makes sense.
That was my intent
Okay.
in that motion.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or clarification needed for anyone?
So I just want to make sure I understand type C buffer plus the fence. Okay.
Correct.
And do we have a location for that fence location? Because I heard
Outside.
outside, which means that it couldn't be on top of the retaining wall,
That's correct.
which means that the trees probably couldn't survive. Because then you're wedging them.
Now you're just making it.
I'm sorry.
Well, and the other consideration, it's not strictly legal, but it kind of potentially rhymes with legal, is if you are going to have the fence outside the landscape buffering, then the fence is taking up most of the buffering, and the landscape buffering becomes unnecessary, and so why are you requiring it in the first place? Whereas if the fence were behind it, then both of them are serving to further buffer. It seems to me, at least. But you do raise a good point about their ability to maintain that landscape buffer over time if the fence is blocking it and if there's no gate on the fence in order to access the landscape.
If I may.
And there will be some access to that landscape buffer close to Southeast Broad. That's not going to be permitted to run all the way out to the property line on Southeast Broad. So they will have some access. We also have bonding and other landscaping requirements that require pretty much maintenance in perpetuity of that buffer. So we do have some requirements within our zoning ordinance to ensure maintenance of it.
I mean, do you want to defer to staff as far as the practical
Yeah,
location of the?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll go along with that, yes, absolutely.
And that way, Planning Commission can discuss it when they look at the site plan specifically.
You're welcome.
That would be great. Ken. So I've just got 6-foot solid privacy fence along the southerly and easterly borders, and then 5 extend 12-foot type C landscape buffer along, take that back, along this portion. Just trying to think how to describe that. Correct.
Correct.
Is everybody clear? Got all the comments they want? All right, if you'll call the roll for us.
Mr. Batchelor?
Aye.
Mr. Tips?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Chair Young?
Aye. All right, that's been approved. Appreciate everybody's patience and input and applicants' willingness to, to take into account some of the requests. Next item is staff reports and other business. I've got a zoning appeals calendar for 2026.
Yes, Chair Young, so we just have the annual calendar. If we can share my screen with you. We're sticking to our typical schedule with, our November and December meetings changing a little bit. And just for your knowledge, you're seeing a third column there that you haven't typically seen in years prior. we've been holding a pre-application meeting with applicants. I've asked that they get those in about a week prior, so we go through it, have time to look at it, and make recommendations to them to get applications in order. So that's what that additional column is. It's worked out well. And once upon a time, to meet those pre-apps, we were having applicants request them the Friday before our submittal deadline. So getting a stated deadline out there to them will help provide staff a little bit of relief from submittals coming in the Friday prior.
Yeah. I bet. All right, well, there's nothing else. We'll
Well, we
adjourn.
would like you to approve that
Oh,
calendar.
my bad.
Make a motion to approve the calendar as presented.
Second?
Motion and a second. You can call the roll for us.
Mr. Batchelor?
Aye.
Mr. Tips?
Aye.
Vice Chair Halliburton?
Aye.
Chair Young?
Aye. All right, so the calendar's been approved.
And then one more announcement, if I may, Chair Young. So just so you know, Ms. Lavender has resigned from the board effective, I believe, last week. So Mr. Blomley's already in process of working to find replacements to present to the city council so that we have a full board.
All right,
Move adjourn.
Second.
he's taking over.